Welcome to Board of Education work session. It's 3 o'clock on August 8th, 2022, and we will begin with a roll call. Oh, Ms. Lemon.
Director Bentley?
Here.
Director
Present.
Mesh?
Present.
Director Matthews?
Present.
Director Mueller?
Present.
Director Norwood?
Present.
Director Pappas?
Present.
Director Sullivan?
Present.
Thank you, Ms. Lemon. We're now to board member comments and reports, and Ms. Sullivan, we'll start with you.
Oh goodness, you started fast there. The summer went fast. It was fast and busy, and I think I'm revving up and I'm ready to get going with this. I'm kind of excited because this is going to be our first year then, I guess, for the exposure of what the whole year looks like. So last year was kind of a learning process and kind of getting our feet wet, and I think I'm starting to get a good understanding of how some of this goes. But yeah, that's about all I got for you.
Deal. Ms. Mueller.
A couple of things. One, I had the opportunity to go to the Young Chautauqua performances at High Plains Chautauqua last week, and I meant to get the names of the two lovely women who performed and failed to go online and find their names again today, but one who played Audrey Hepburn and was an 8th grader, I believe, at Chapelot, and one who played Dolores Baca and was going into her senior or junior year at Central, were amazing. Truly, the Young Chautauqua program, I'm so glad we support it. I'm glad that we foster it still in our schools. It was really, really tremendous. So I just wanted to say shout out to the organizers there.
And that's Jane Swisher and Avon McCall.
Thank you, Michael. You knew who I was talking about.
I knew
They
you were
were
talking about.
great.
I spend a lot of time at Young Chautauqua.
Oh, they are so terrific. Did just an amazing job. It's not just about their acting, it's about the knowledge of these people. They knew their biographies backward and forward, even when people asked questions. I was truly impressed. I did want to say thank you to the sponsors and volunteers and to all the employees, teachers, and staff who were also at the back to school event on Saturday. A tremendous event. Also to Teresa and your staff. I know you worked your tail off. I know you guys were probably exhausted when you got home. It was, I think, fascinating to see all of it come together logistically, but then to talk to the parents who were really, really thankful for getting backpacks and supplies. Those backpacks were well equipped with lots of supplies. And to Danielle Bach and her team for providing the free lunch. They did an amazing job too. I actually talked to quite a few community partners, and they were so happy to be there. They were excited for school to start. They were excited for those partnerships. And one of them I just wanted to throw out there was the Department of Public Health. I chatted with her, and I just wanted to throw this out. I'm going to give this to Ms. Lemon about a workshop that they're providing to parents on how to find vaping happening in the home with kids. That is very secretive. It's very easy to conceal. I myself have a vested interest in this because I'm going to just be very honest. At the college level, many students vape. All of them, they hide it very easily, and all of them told me they started in high school. So obviously, it's a problem that people don't pick up on it until they get into, and then in college, students finally reveal, because they're adults, yeah, I've been vaping for 3 years, and so I just wanted to let you know that I talked to her, and they are having these free workshops, and they are willing to even have specific workshops if we find any parents who are really interested and can attend on the one day they're providing. So that was just one example of many of the conversations, so I just wanted to point that out, that our community partners are just an incredible resource, and I'm so thankful for them partnering with the district on all the things that we do. And that's all. One last thing. You may have noticed an article or a little snippet in the article in the paper this weekend. Yes, we have solidified our plans. We have found a house in Boulder. So I did want to be very transparent that we will be moving at the end of September 30th. I plan to tender my resignation from the board, which does make me emotional, but that's the plan. That's all I have.
Pepper. We'll be emotional too. Sad to lose you. Mr. Bentley.
Yeah, summer felt fast. made a couple events in the chaos. We did the boomerang back nine ribbon cutting. That was really amazing. I was able to play also, but they did a really great job. That's a huge asset for the school district and the city. A great project. Got to learn all about that. We hit the gap graduation on 6/24, which was really good. Those are really fun events. And then I think on the 20th we did the Habitat for Humanity breakfast and Dancing with the Stars that Dr. Pilch won. So that was a fun event. But other than that, we just lots of running around being a dad. So I had a good summer.
Ms. Pappas?
Yeah, it's nice to be back. Just the same, Saturday, that event is always just so amazing, and all the work that goes into it. You recovered very well. I mean, it's like yeah. But thank you for that. And also, it was nice to have Wade and your people there helping us park and listening to me moan that we need somebody else somewhere else, so thanks for that. It was great, and I think that I don't know how many backpacks were given away, but it seems like this year the need was much greater, and we had a lot of people, and even in line, it was hot, and people were there for a very long time, but they were all so gracious and just excited to be there, so that was great. Again, the Habitat breakfast on the 20th, it's always amazing, and just a shout out to our community. I don't know if you've seen the plans for the new Hope Springs development, but that is just incredible. And all the donations and people that give to the community to make living accessible for all of our community members. And then I was able to go to the DLT Kickoff on the 18th and welcome administrators and cabinet, and that was it's just always amazing to have everybody back in the same place and listen to Dr. Pilch give a welcome back, inspirational welcome back to everyone. So that was quite an honor to be there and appreciated that.
We'll just add to that I had put the slides from the DLT in eWeek. I know they may not really make much sense to you not having been there to see it, but at least for those of you who weren't able to be there, you can at least see the slides that we used for that half day with our administrators.
I'm next.
You're next.
I too really enjoyed the kickoff event. Wow, what Teresa, it was amazing what your staff put together and volunteers. So a big hearty thank you to them, the Greeley West cheer team, the Northridge football team, all the volunteers, all the staff members that were there. It ran like a well-oiled machine. It was so fun to be a part of it. My first one. And even after my time on the board is done, I would like to be a volunteer and help be a part of that. It was just fantastic. So thank you very much. Also had an opportunity to go to the Gap in the next graduation. What a very wonderful ceremony. Connected with a student of mine that was a freshman in DECA at Northridge, and then all of a sudden she just disappeared. And I'm sitting up on the stage, and I look and I see her, and she smiles and waves at me. So it was pretty cool to get a chance to reconnect with her again, and just a chance to get to visit with the students as well too. Did go the month of July without air conditioning in my house. That 106-degree day, whatever it was, I think we finally cooled the house off to about 90. And then we found out, I know I'm a little old for this, but I found out that both of our boys are going to have grandkids. So I get to spoil them and then send them home. You know what they say about paybacks, right? So, yeah.
Your boys are having grandkids?
Yes, they are. It's one of their wives are having kids.
Making him a grandkid.
You're having grandkids. You're becoming a grandfather, not a great-grandfather.
Yes,
Okay, yeah, I just wanted to be clear.
Both of our sons' wives are having children. We found out that one is a girl. We don't know what the other one is yet, but they're both due in March.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah, I get to spoil them and then send them home. I'm loving it. So, and that's it.
Should we start calling you Pops?
Yeah, that'd be great. I'm going to get, my dad, our kids called my dad Paul, so I'm going to have them call me Paul.
So looking at my calendar, looks like I went to quite a few events, mostly with, partners of the district, which was a lot of fun. I also got to go to the Boomerang Back Nine. They didn't invite me to play because I don't play golf, but could have been fun for everybody to watch, I guess. I'm also a part of the Student Wellness Committee, and we had a big meeting of all of the partners, community partners, and different wellness team members to do a deep dive into some of the survey data. And there's a lot of really positive things that our students have increased in some of their health measures, and then it's also helpful to see where some of the focus areas are. We also had an action team meeting then later on. And for any of you who don't know, we're required to have a wellness plan for the district, and it is modeled after the I-2030 plan. So some of the goals, I mean, they line up, and so it's very cool. I think you guys may have gotten that report. I went to my first ever naturalization ceremony at Centennial Village, and that is just really a beautiful ceremony, fun to see people, I think something like 20 or 25 different countries represented that had become citizens. I also got to go to the district leadership kickoff. It's been fun. I'm now going to have 2 high schoolers in the district, so I'll probably go to a lot more high school events of one specific high school, but Greeley Central had a car and bike show. That was a lot of fun. That was a fundraiser, I think, as well. And been impressed with some of the ways they welcome the freshmen. My son did the freshman transition program, and my daughter did AP boot camp. So just great, some of those extra supports for kids. So yeah, and excited for another year, excited for all of the ribbon cutting ceremonies and brand new buildings. And I know that's causing some stress as not everything's quite all ready to go, but we're really close. So.
Thanks, Ms. Mash. Yeah, I think everybody knows, we were pretty well gone for a lot of the summer, from really the last board meeting until about 2 weeks ago. We got back into town. I was gone for most of that time. But yeah, since we've been back, there's been lots going on. Again, as everybody said, the event Saturday was just fantastic. Appreciate Mr. Norwood on the microphone, helping out, and then yeah, everything seems to be back up and going. It seems like we've been in schools, or at least my kids have been in schools or at school events already. Greeley West was hosting golf event today. It's just, yeah, we're back and ready to go. Also, my eye is doing something funny. Today. And so if you think that I'm winking at you, I'm not. But my right eye, I think I don't know if I've got something on my eyelid or, yeah, I'm struggling with my eye. Just know that. Upcoming events and calendar review. So everybody break out your calendars. Take a look at those. And guys, I just want to point out that, and make sure that everybody's clear, like where we find events. So we get these every time, but we also, everything that we need typically is going to be in eWeek, right? Does everybody know that? So you're shaking your head, Mr. Norwood.
It pops up on my calendar. I think Amy does such a great job that
Yeah.
all of a sudden these things pop up, so.
That's the way that I do it too. So we're actually told about 3 different ways. So the agenda is posted on Thursdays, Ms. Lemon, is that right? So you can go in on Thursday, look at the agenda. You will see the time, like I'm looking at it right now, work session, conference room, Astor, 3 p.m. That's always posted on the Thursday before board meetings after we finalize what the agenda is going to look like at our leadership meeting on Wednesdays. Then on Friday, pretty much every Friday, not every Friday during the summer, I don't think, but pretty much every Friday, Dr. Pilch puts together something for us, and it's just the highlights. Generally, it's a lot of clips from the paper, but in that always is going to be the upcoming events, right? So you're going to see it either on the calendar, or you can see it on the board agenda, or you can see it in eWeek, and that will. And if you ever, there've been a couple times where there was a discrepancy. I don't think probably since you guys have been on the board, or since we've had this board, but every once in a while there'll be be a discrepancy in some times or something like that, but in that case, you just need to reach out to somebody. But it'll have the time, the location. Generally, like sometimes we need a specific parking lot. It'll have the dress if we're at an event. Not for everything, because most things we have a good idea, but like for graduations, sometimes that was all in e-week. So make sure that you are reading e-week. Every Friday when Ms. Lemon sends that out, it will only help you know what's happening in the district, and especially the stuff that we're responsible for. But anybody see anything on this calendar? So this is a calendar for work sessions and board meetings.
Yes.
You see something?
Well, I don't see something. I see lots of things. No.
right.
The cornerstone ceremony tomorrow at Greeley West. We had talked briefly about what that was and where we should go for that, and I don't know if we ended up knowing that.
We actually need to go to the west side. I don't think I've had a chance to tell you that. I'm sorry, I just talked to Ben Johnson today.
Yeah,
gonna
that's
do
what
it.
I actually put that out to the board last week and week. So you
I
park.
even read it.
I know, it was just, there was a lot. There was a lot of information. So park on the west side over by the football field, where you all have parked before when you have
Right.
visited west.
tours.
So I
Yeah.
knew that was the ribbon cutting. I
yeah.
thought we had talked about something different.
Yeah, at Cornerstone the same.
Okay.
What we didn't know last week was which corner it was going to be on, so do we know? But we'll meet you there.
Okay.
I don't know if it's on the north or the south.
Ceremony's just going to be there. They're not going to try
They're
it
not?
because it's in the construction
Okay,
zone.
okay. So they'll just do us probably close to where they're doing the ribbon cutting.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay,
And they're not
Perfect.
going to actually
yeah.
set this up.
And then when you go to Toynton Academy next week, which I believe is next Thursday, is that right? It'd be wise to drive over there before next Thursday, so you have the lay of the land, because there's multiple ways to enter. So you can enter off of 71st Avenue, going from, whether you're driving north or south on 71st Ave, you can enter into the front of the building there. It's going to be hard probably to make a left-hand turn into there at times if you're coming from the south. And then you can also enter off of 4th Street on the north side of the building. So, but we'll just park in the front lot there, and the ribbon cutting will be there in the front lot, and so will the Cornerstone celebration. Sorry about the confusion on that. We've been actually working with our contractors to find out the location as well, and sometimes have shifted, so.
So east side, front lot, east side.
Yeah, on Toynton, it's on the east side, is the front lot, and it's, you'll notice it. It's
They got
clearly
a
in front of the
stoplight
building.
there too to
Yeah,
help get in
yes,
and
there
out
is a
as well, too,
stoplight.
so.
Yes. So pretty exciting to have those ribbon cuttings and those Cornerstone events. I think if you have to pick one to attend, I would say the ribbon cutting is by far the more important event of the two. The Cornerstone event is really a ceremonial event conducted by the Masons, and it's something they do with new buildings and new construction, and we will participate with them in their event. And we'd love to have you, but I also know it's a lot to ask to get out 2 times in one day.
Anybody see anything else? Obviously, we're pretty busy for the next few weeks, as is always the case in August. Notice the Dream Team breakfast. That one is different. But get that on your calendars because it's a 7 a.m. on September 15th. Ms. Pappas is going to be honored.
I do have a question.
Sure.
When we get invited to individual events from schools, I know we don't necessarily put this on here, but I noticed homecoming stuff starting already pretty early, yeah?
Yeah.
Because we got invited to that central parade.
Yeah, did everybody get that?
Yeah, everyone got
Central
invited.
Parade?
Okay, okay.
So yeah, that is really early this year.
It's like, what,
Central
September
Homecoming is
1st?
like, yeah.
Okay, okay.
Or that Friday, that first Friday in September, I think before Labor Day. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's-
Okay, I just wanted to verify that was correct and make sure I had that right, okay.
And we'll talk a little bit more here about school visits and invites to school visits
Okay.
when we get to that item on the agenda too. Thank you for that.
Anything else, guys, on the calendars? All right. So we are to school visits. And this is something that we began talking about we can remember back to May. We began talking about school visits in May and what's the best way for this board to get into schools. We've done that one way for a long time, but that might not work as well for us. And so Dr. Pilch has been thinking about that and thinking through the different options. And Dr. Pilch, I'll give it to you.
Thank you, President Matthews. There's really two things I'm looking for tonight, and if staff will help me to keep track of what we hear. I'm really looking to hear from each of you about what it is you would like to experience, get from, see from the school visit idea, and what we've done with school visits. And then the second thing, and we'll do it after we hear from each of you on that I'd like to hear is what times of day and days of the week work best for you. As we got to the end of the school year, we really dwindled down to 2 or 3 board members at some of our school visits. So we want to try and find, I get that not all of you can be at every visit. I get you have lives and other obligations, but if we can get it down to a day, at least a day or days of the week that work best for everybody and times that work best, then we can at least try to get a good portion of you at most every visits. So I'd like to work on that today too. And then a little bit about just kind of the role of board members in schools. So maybe we'll start there and I'll just do a little level setting on that with you all. And Michael and Terry, you can certainly jump in on this, but so you may get individual invites like you did from the student at Central. Central always does that. What I would ask is that if it is something that is not open to the public, so for example, at Greeley Central, they wouldn't invite, not just anybody could be in their parade, for example. So if it's something that is not open to the public, I would ask that you let me know about that so that I can work back with whomever is inviting you and get the whole board invited. And the idea is just to give the board equal experience in schools and some of you have more connections in schools than others. Some of you worked in our schools, and so you naturally know more people who might invite you out. And so what we really try to do is have you all invited to those things that are kind of not public events so that board members can have similar experiences. Now, those individual events at the schools that you liaison with, and we won't change the schools that you liaisoned with last year. We're going to keep them the same this year since 3 of you just came on in this past semester, and then we'll be filling Miss Mueller's seat. So we're going to keep the board liaison positions the same. But at those schools, Terry and Michael, I'll let you talk a little bit about, if you would, about what are some of those activities that have worked well for board members at their individual schools to be a part of.
Sure. So, I'll just tell you what I do typically at the beginning of the year. The schools that I'm a liaison with, I send an email to the administration team and just introduce myself and tell them I'm so excited to be their board liaison, which I am, and let them know that I enjoy going to concerts. I have been invited to be on the Parent Accountability Committee at some schools, and they will invite you if they want you to be part of that. Anything that they have that is a school-wide presentation program. Sometimes there have been theater events, like I'm thinking of Billy Martinez. They did a play in the gym and they invited all of us. But if you let your school know who you are and that you would appreciate it if they have the time to invite you, but I also let them know that I'll be watching the calendar because they don't have time to remember to invite us to everything. So I watch their calendars, and if I'm planning on coming to an event, I give them a heads up just so they know instead of showing up. Just because regardless of what we think, I know that principals and other admin really like to know when you're in their building, and they'd like to be able to introduce you if you're there. So that's typically what I do. And I don't know, it's worked really well. Not every building wants you to be part of their accountability committee. Some principals really like having you there, but not everybody invites you to that. They do have their PTO is different, or their parent group is different. And so attending that is, that's open to the entire school. So if you wanted to go there, just letting the principal know, but that's different than just showing up one day at their school accountability committee meeting. amazing. So that's typically what I do. It's worked pretty well. I'll send the emails tomorrow, just wanted to confirm that we're having the same schools, and that's typically how I start the year.
And I think that, agree, the SAC meetings, if you want to know what's happening in the school, those meetings are very informative. Again, you often will get invitations to that, sometimes not. You can just, if you send an email to the principal and just like, I'm glad to be at SAC meetings, if you'll let me know when those are going to be. But otherwise, I think the public events are really some of the best events to go to. So I went last year to Franklin for, I don't know, they invited all of their parents. They wanted to do a career fair for their kids, and they invited all their parents to present like what they did, so that their kids could begin to get an idea of what job opportunities are out there. And it was a really great event, and open to the public, and it's a great way just to go and see what they're doing, meet teachers, connect to the administration. Those public events, especially, if Chapelo is your school, I don't know who has Chapelo, but you definitely want to get to some of the art events because it's an art school. Sometimes it's very difficult to get to all those events because, again, I've got kids at Greeley Central and Greeley West, so my school was Northridge. I did not make it to any Northridge football games, even though the Northridge football team was really good. There are just so many events that I can attend on Friday night, but so you don't feel like you have to go to all the events. Just the public events are some of the best ways. It's generally something they're proud of, and where they're things that they want you to see. So I would encourage those as well. The SAC events and the public events, generally the best places I've found to go.
And I will just say that Denise Ford at Franklin, her theater, her music, she will typically, regardless if we're attached to Franklin or not, she will send us invites, and she usually sends them to the entire board so we can all participate. And some schools do that, but those are nice opportunities too, because you don't always know about those.
You guys have any questions about that? Anybody want to share anything else around that and kind of around the liaison role of the board members as we get this new school year started?
Can I just add something? And this is also coming from a former principal. I think when I was a principal at one of the elementary schools, there was a board member that showed up all the time at the school. I didn't know he was coming, and he would come. His heart was in the right place, but he would come and he would just want to take time to visit, or he would want me to take him around, or he would want to go visit in a classroom. And I think that I appreciate being a board member now. I appreciate that we have kind of thought about that, because it just having a board member in your building is like, oh, I have so much to do anyway, and now I need to take time to have this visit, or so I think it's just something to be cognizant of, and I'm glad that we've kind of evolved to a situation where we're reaching out and going in public events and invites.
Yeah, I don't think we can stress enough how distracting we are to an entire school. It doesn't seem like we should be, but maybe we don't think of ourselves as just a parent or a principal, but we're incredibly distracting when we show up at a school, and principals will stop whatever they're doing, whatever they need to be doing, to stay with us and play the good host for us. So.
Any other comments or questions around that, guys, that you want to share?
So I just want to offer, one of the things I did with my liaison schools, just to introduce myself, and because I don't have kids in the school district anymore, and I wanted to make sure the principals knew who I was at my liaison schools, and not everyone needs to do this. I set aside the funds to do this, so I did it. I would write, we have the little cards, the stationery that that with the school district logo on it. And I, at the beginning of every semester, send a little note to the staff and to the teachers and say thank you for your hard work and getting ready for the next school year, and actually dropped off like muffins for the staff. Now, the reason I did that was just so they know we are not, I do think it's a fine line between we are not in your business, but we see you.
Right.
And we know you work hard and we appreciate the work you're doing. And so what I did in those cases is actually would work with the principal and the office manager to say, when's the best time to drop this off? And no, I'm not staying for a tour. I'm just, because odds are I'm coming from the gym and I look really bad anyway, right? So like I'm just dropping off. I'm going to get there at 7:30 in the morning. But just let your staff know we care about them. So that's just one of the other little tidbits I did to make sure they knew we were available, we're here, but I don't want to be in your business. That makes sense?
Thank you. So what I think would be good next would be just to hear from each one of you on what would the ideal school visit be like? What would you like it to be? What would you hope it to be? So I'll give you a minute to really think about that, and then we'll just go around and hear from each of you on, it's the start of the school year, so we have an opportunity here to rebuild this if we want to, or restructure it. So I want to hear from each of you on where we might want to go. Do we have someone who'd like to start?
Can I ask a couple of questions, or a question? I'm just curious, when we do a school visit, does the school administration team get to decide what we see and what they want it to be?
Yeah, typically. Yes, typically they do. Sometimes they'll talk with Wes or Anthony ahead of time and say, this is what I'm thinking about covering, and Wes and Anthony will give them input. But we don't give them a topic or a direction around that.
And so
And they determine which classrooms we go to. And
the purpose is kind of twofold: for us to see what's going on and for them to share with us what they want to share.
yeah, I think when I first got here, the purpose of school visits, and this has been 8 years ago now, really was to highlight ongoing programs throughout the district. So principals were assigned a presentation topic in order to educate the board on those different topics. Stacy's nodding her head, so I'm getting it right. So, if different initiatives in the district, those schools were then assigned to present on those. So, in getting feedback from principals about that, when I came in, they really wanted that felt awkward to them because they might not be the expert in that topic, or it might not be the right time of year to talk about that topic. So they really wanted to talk about the things they want to talk about. And I think what we found over time is that you always leave with something new that you've learned about that school that you can then talk about in the community. Rarely are you hearing the same information from school to school. And so the other intent is to give you a baseline of information around what's happening in the district, so that when you're asked questions and you're out and about talking about the school district, you have some working knowledge because you've been in some schools and you've learned about some of our programs.
So I don't remember if it was from the listening session or a public comment, but I have heard feedback that our school visits, maybe we don't see what's really going on, we just see the best things or something. So, I think if there's a problem in the school, it needs to go up the chain of command first. It doesn't come to the board ultimately. Anyway, I don't know. That is something that I heard, and so I'm curious about that, I guess.
So do you mean like community is worried that we're not seeing what's really happening in our schools, or parents,
or community member who said
staff are worried?
Yeah, I think it was a community. Does anyone else remember that from a community listening session or public comment?
I remember that.
Yeah, there was a, sort of an accusation that we only see what
They want us to
they want
see.
us to see and not what's really happening. Which I don't think that's accurate, but I was curious if, I don't know, I mean, I don't think it's the appropriate route for like venting to happen to the board, right? So I don't know. I guess I'm just trying to get like more clarity of like, what is the purpose of our visits? I mean, I agree. We should know all the programs and we should see the celebrations and what's going well. And so I think it should also be administration of the schools driven, that they're showing us what they want to show us.
See, I have a slightly different take.
Okay.
Because my 3 favorite visits, which may not be feasible, I'm just going to say it right now, may not be feasible at every school, were the student-led visits. That was Jefferson Senior High, Ames Early College Academy, and Transitions. When the students led the visits, I felt they were great visits. The students could give you their perspective on things. They were proud to show the things they were working on. Jefferson Senior was the one I'm thinking of most, where those students, they were the leaders. But Early College Academy, they did it too. Remember, they were talking about the clubs they were involved in. If it can be student-driven as much as possible, if it's feasible, and I know in elementary school settings that's harder, I really do. But to give those high school leaders, those middle school leaders, an opportunity to tell their own story about their school experience. Now, they may not know everything, and they may not be able to highlight everything in their school, but that was really enriching for me to hear from them directly. But that's just my take.
I agree about Jefferson. That was blown away the way that the student leadership took us places and took the leadership there. So I agree with that. That was fun.
And I found the staff very transparent. Oftentimes we're meeting, we're not just meeting with the principal, we're meeting with the staff as well. And the more you know what's going on, the more questions we can ask. And I remember last year, and I think it just ended up being, this was in the fall, so it was before this board was together. But we went to Centennial, and we were, and I think it was just Terry and I, perhaps. And they were, third grade was talking about our new math curriculum and how much they loved it, and I just knew that not the first grade teachers were struggling. And you can just ask, like, okay, so first grade teachers, tell me if you love the math curriculum. So you just, you can find out. It's pretty clear, I think, when you go in a school, if things are working well or not. You can watch the interactions with teachers and with principals, and how excited that staff is, and how excited they are to tell you about things. And I have a hard time believing that again, if you're watching, that things can really be kept from you. Also, the teachers reach out to you every once in a while, and so.
Maybe it's something we can report out or something as well, like, I don't know, to change that narrative. Because, yeah, I also agree that we're not, like, just seeing some sugar-coated version. And that might not be a wide.
Well, I have to say, I think it's human nature that if the board is coming into the school, you are going to put your best foot forward. You are. That's human nature. I mean, any one of us would do the same thing. That's not to say, we have been in schools when, children were really having a hard day and had to be removed from the classroom, or the classroom had to be removed from that child. So, we do this long enough, we are going to encounter some things. I certainly want schools to feel like it is safe to have us in their schools, and that we're not there to inspect and criticize their work. That's the role of Stacy Dattery and Anthony Asmus, who supervise those building principals.
So I will say that when I first got on the board, the structure was so it was tight. So we did our meetings, so we did some in the morning and some in the afternoon. And the morning, teachers were not required, but told the board would be coming in, and so they would get there early, and we would do kind of a mingle type thing. And I know that it felt like teachers really, while they appreciated us being there and they appreciated that interaction, and it was right when Dr. Pilch came on as well, so it was a chance for everybody to get to know each other. But to limit that so that teachers are not stressing about getting to their classroom or duty. So we kind of have eliminated that a little bit. But it is very nice, especially at the end of the day when we do the afternoon ones, because then teachers can come and we can be in the library and, you know, just have that, not necessarily to mingle, because I'm not a mingler, but to have that whole group, you know, have you say something, have the principal say something, and then just get a chance to know the teachers. I appreciate that. The morning was just awkward, and so I'm glad we kind of got over that with COVID. But
Yeah, and I think what we found in the morning, we then made it optional instead of required that you come,
Yeah.
and hardly any teachers would come down to the to the library or the lounge or whatever, because they were getting ready for the
Right.
school day. And especially now in our elementary schools, and I think most of our middle schools, kids go straight to the classroom, so they're not being held in the cafeteria or on the playground or somewhere. When they arrive, they go to the classroom, and so teachers do feel an urgency, I think, to get to their classrooms when it's in the morning first thing.
And we were able to go visit some of the classrooms with that, I think they call it the soft start or something, I don't know what they call it, but
Yeah, Brentwood.
that was great, just being able to go in and see the interaction before it was even structured instruction, so I liked that a lot as well.
And I think during that time, you were able to have some more
Yep.
informal dialogue with teachers.
Yep.
Because they weren't teaching at that point. The kids were transitioning
Yep.
into their classrooms and getting ready for the day, and teachers could step aside and visit with individual board members if they wanted to.
I don't know if we can, but I think it would be, I mean, we keep resounding, hearing this back and forth, but community members, parents, leaders, or officials maybe to join us, you know, a handful every time, you know, to say bye, you know, I don't know what it worked out to be, but half a dozen or something, if we could make a sign up and bring some of them with us and kind of re-engage them. It seems like we keep hearing they feel like they're locked out of schools with COVID and the new safety stuff and stuff, so that was kind of my only input I had for it.
How do you guys, I think the district used to do that here. And it was kind of a recruitment tool for school board members. Yeah, Teresa's nodding her head, yes, to get community members into the schools with board members. I think they used to do some of that. They invited community also. How do you guys feel about that? What do
I
you
think my biggest question would be that we all had to pass our background checks to,
Oh, yeah, they would
go
have to
into,
pass
so we would
background
just want to make sure we're very clear on that transparency of, you know, keeping kids safe is still our paramount.
Yeah, they'd
paramount
have to be an
concern.
approved volunteer
Yeah.
to come in.
Would we be looking at only parents that have kids in that school, or parents in general, or any community members for any schools?
Well, I think when the district did it before, it was open to the public, and they just had to sign up ahead of time. You know, that gets a little more difficult to manage for principals. You know, if 20 people show up, which they would at Greeley West if we had a visit, probably 100 would show up. That would be very difficult to manage, you know, during the school day, those kinds of numbers.
Yeah.
I
was
think you'd
just
want to
thinking-
cap it.
Yeah, I was thinking just small
Yeah.
and then just rotate it, you know, if you attended the last one, then you're ineligible this time or something. You know, just keep rotate it and just keep them.
Don't the schools have partnerships with some businesses? Which maybe they could reach out to some of the businesses and say, the school board's coming.
Well,
Would you like to send a
even
member?
like the city where there's a lot of turnover with all the officials there, so I mean, I'm sure there's some officials like Raymond I'm sure he hasn't gotten into much of the schools, you know, yet, so
Yep.
stuff like that, just
Yep.
keep everything rolling.
The other thing I do value, though, and I think would be good to maintain, as long as we're not disruptive, and that is the key, is seeing the teachers teach. Boy, that's really invigorating to see the way they do things. It's changed so much since my kids were in school, and they haven't been out of school that much or that long. So I think having opportunities to be able to see the teachers at work is still a very nice aspect of those school visits.
And we get student engagement at that point too. 'Cause we usually ask them what they're working on or what was the story or.
I'm wondering if we can do everything though. Like if we, Dr. Pilch will always say, and I read this somewhere else. So it's like, oh, that's where she got it. But you know, we can do anything. We just can't do everything. And so if we have additional guests with us, I think that will limit or should limit, you know, our ability to get to the classroom, right? Because that's disruptive for our kids. So, I mean, it's disruptive enough to have, you know, 4 or 5 of us, and we break up into groups, and you have 3 people walking in the classroom, and that's disruptive enough. So I think if we want to have people come in and see the schools, and I think it's always great when we have people in our schools, and having gone on so many Greeley West tours over the last couple of years at different phases, it's great to have those people engaged and want to see it, want to see what's happening in our schools. I just think we need to be clear about what our purpose for the visit is, and we need to prioritize as a board. Do we want to see kids in the classroom and see the teachers and see what's happening, or do we want you know, a bigger visit where the public is with us, and we sort of get to tour the school and see, you know, the principal can tell us about the programs and what happens, and all of that can happen after hours, and teachers can be there. But I do think that would be limiting for us getting into the classrooms.
We are planning to re-up our VIP tours. So we had stopped doing those during COVID, but we are planning to reinstate those, which are tours that community members can sign up for to be a part of. We do plan to highlight the new buildings first, because we know we have a lot of people who want to get into the new buildings and the buildings with the significant additions. But those tours would get folks into some classrooms, or at least peeking in the door of some classrooms, I think. I hear what you're saying, President Matthews. I mean, it is disruptive when we walk in classrooms. And so we'd want to be judicious about, you know, how many people go in the classroom at once, and how we manage that visit. But I also know that community and parents want to get back in our classrooms. And so I would say, you know, we need to be doing and I've been telling principals this and staffs as I meet with them, we need to be doing a big push on getting volunteers back into our schools and getting community and staff back in our classrooms. You know, there's a lot of dialogue out there about what public education looks like, and I don't think necessarily what public education might look like in other districts or other states is what it necessarily looks like in the Greeley Evans School District. And so I think it's important, I do think it's important to get those folks, visitors and volunteers, back in our schools.
Yeah, I think 36 schools and 2 a month for 9 months, you know, it's once every 2 years basically. So
Yeah.
it's not like we're shutting down the school for extended periods, but
Right.
you know, it's once every couple of years that they see us. So.
That's a good point. So then is that, anybody else have anything on that? Taylor, I don't think we've heard from you. And Rob, do you have anything else?
I'm good. I do want to echo what, I think I was in the same group that Natalie was in, Miss Mash was in, where, and I can't remember exactly what it was, but they wanted to see what actually goes on, not what they want us to see, or what they want us to see. So, but I do enjoy the school visits. It's an opportunity to get into schools and get a chance to meet them, and I enjoy that. As a former teacher, I like to see what teachers are doing, how well they do with technology that I couldn't do. So, but yeah, I'm good with it. I think it's important to get a lot of people into the new buildings as well too. So,
I too have heard the same, that we're probably not getting the full realism of what's going in the classrooms. But I agree with you. You bring the best of the best. It's like when I was getting my teacher evaluations done. You made sure it was the best of the best day, and some days it fell apart, and some days it was fabulous, and you don't know what you're going to get. But I think the biggest impact, as well as what Pepper said, is we need to see if they would make it more student-led, because I think that you're getting more of a realism, because kids don't lie. Kids tell you the truth of everything. And they will bring that realism, they'll bring their excitement and their knowledge to the table, and I think that's where we get the more eye-opening than if it's more of a professional thing done by the administrative staff. I think hearing from the kids is more impactful, because that's what we're here for.
The only other tidbit I'd offer is that I've hearing from the community feedback sessions as well, this kind of constant refrain of more vocational and technology and career-oriented education. I had a conversation with Kelly Longacre on Saturday and was really thanking the FFA students for being there with their animals. And I said, you know, it's really interesting to think about those new classrooms at West, those new CTE classrooms and spaces. And I said, you know, interestingly, I don't know what you do with those spaces. You know, I'm not a welder, I'll admit. So I'm just fascinated by some of the skills those students are learning. And so I don't wonder if it might not be, one of the things I remember from the Northridge visit when they were winning the award, I don't remember what the award was.
The Colorado Succeeds.
Yes, is meeting the culinary students and having them show us the food they were making. Seeing what the AutoCAD or whatever that's called, the drafting on the computer, what they were doing, that was super interesting for someone who just doesn't work in those spaces. And so if there were to be public opportunities to tour, I would think those would be important spaces to show.
It's also really hard to watch welding.
Yeah, well, sure. You gotta have all the right equipment, right?
All you
It
see is a
really
spark.
intriguing. It's-
We could see the raw materials and then we could see the after product.
I'm a nerd for it, but it's like the only trade that you're on a molecular level and you're actually fusion.
You gotta have the right
Yeah, I mean,
helmet
just
thing,
like
right?
It is a cool process, but yeah, that one would be rough, public.
Yeah.
I do say too, when we were at Jefferson, I was so amazed that the kids had a wall there and they were installing windows. I wanted to go learn how to do that. I mean, I'm with you, what a wonderful thing, and I get asked a lot too, well, is there still CTE in the schools? And I'm like, you need to get out and see these, because these kids are learning some great stuff, some great things, so.
And so then I guess the next question is days of the week and time of day. So I think what would be helpful is if you've really got some limitations on certain days of the week, that you all could share that, and we could maybe try to stay away from those days of the week and our certain times of the day. I mean, we're typically going to go first thing in the morning or as late as we can in the afternoon with school still in session. We're typically not going to go in the middle of the day because I know that's disruptive for all of you. But if there's days of the week that are really, really hard for you to get out to do, I'd like to try to avoid those days of the week.
First thing just always seem to be, Mondays and Fridays seem to be the roughest for me, but that's more, it's not that big a deal. I can make most anything work, so I'll kind of defer to everybody else.
Well, our Mondays are full every other week with school board meetings as well, too, so. Fridays are good days for me. That's a day that I set back in case we got bad weather or equipment breakdown, and now that I've got one of my big commercial properties under control, so I have a little bit more time in afternoons, seem to work better. Mornings just not going to work. My days usually start at 3:30, so in the morning, so every day, so.
Let me ask this question. Does anybody need mornings? I mean, the reason that we did, if I remember right, the reason we did Friday mornings is somebody needed Friday, and you can't do Friday afternoon.
Yeah, Friday afternoon
Right,
is
so,
not
I
great.
mean, so it's like,
Kids are
okay,
crazy.
we could do Friday mornings, but if we don't need mornings, it sounds like what I'm hearing, mornings aren't great for you. I don't think, you're saying mornings weren't great for teachers, and I would echo that. Definitely a different group,
Well, that
or it
was
seemed
when we
like they were
meeting-
rushed.
Yeah, that was when we were meeting before. I don't know.
Yeah.
As a former teacher, I was always anxious to get in my room and get ready for the day, rather than have to worry about somebody coming in my room.
Afternoons, I prefer much more. Just with the tasks that I'm doing now at work, it ties me up between 10 and 2. I really can't get out of there too often.
So then is morning workable, like first thing in the morning, like a 7:30, 7:45? I mean, that's not great if we're going to do a staff meeting, but maybe if we're doing that soft start where we're visiting with staff as they're getting ready for their day.
What I think works good what I think worked well in the mornings in the last year or so was when we went in and we just met with the principal informally, and then we went in and did that soft start, just kind of walking around in classrooms. And I think we went to all of them. I don't think it was go on this one because you're seeing something great. I think we were just interacting with kids and teachers, which I really appreciated. But that was in the morning, so it was, I don't know what time schools start now.
I think my answer is I defer a little bit to the school, because I think there were certain schools that worked well in the morning, like seeing the preschool program, that wouldn't maybe work so, I don't know. I don't have a preference personally, but I do wonder if the administrators in certain sites would. So
Well,
that's
they don't want us on Monday morning and they don't want us on Friday afternoon. I think
Right, so
I
that's the
think
only
they would
preference.
prefer those two things, yeah. But other than that, I think they would work with us.
Okay.
I can be flexible because I make my schedule 6 weeks ahead of time. So if we get these on the calendar, then I can work around it.
Most afternoons, we started early enough in the morning. If I can get my son motivated and say, I need you to take care of the afternoons, I can probably do most afternoons. Tuesdays are not good. We do about 25 accounts on Tuesdays, so that's a bad day for us. But the rest of the time, I think I could make it work in the afternoons.
Anytime works for me. I'm retired.
I am too.
I think the only reason I liked mornings is there's not one 21-year-old that wants to meet me at 8 a.m., I guarantee you. But I'm pretty flexible.
I'm pretty flexible also, although I just thought of something. I'll probably be tutoring at Shawsheen again now after and done that the last 2 years. So I don't know what day that'll be yet, but generally it used to be Wednesdays. Taylor, is pretty much any day pretty good for you, afternoon-wise?
Yeah.
Or it sounds, did you say afternoons were better today?
Just between the 10 and 2 frame, I'm kind of tied up.
Oh, okay, yeah.
The rest of it, I can do anything pretty much.
Okay.
So
I can make
morning,
it
or
work.
first thing in the morning or afternoon?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think, ideally, if we set a couple of meetings a month, that if you could at least get to, one of the two a month, that would be, I think that'd be a win for us. And then if you, have a desire to visit a specific school, I'm happy to set that up for you, and, either Stacy or Anthony or I will come with you, and we'll get you out to a specific school if you have a desire to do that too. At another time, I'm happy to do that. Just let me know what you'd like to do.
And then I just want to, I don't know if we mentioned this before or not, but if you get it, like sometimes because people in the district, you'll get an invite all the time. They'll say, oh, just come into my room anytime. Please just come in. So if that happens and they really want you to come into their room, what we have done in the past is we going through the principal and then inviting all the board members, and then can go in the classroom that the teacher really wants you to see what they're doing. And that worked really well. I think we did that a couple times, but we opened it up to everybody instead of, just one person's going to go in and see the screens.
Yeah, and the idea there is just that you all have the same level of education you're getting around what's happening in the schools. And quite frankly, some of you know a lot more teachers, and worked with, and maybe Miss Pappas hired them, and so they would be very comfortable inviting her in, and really we want to give all of you that opportunity. If there's if they're showing off the new literacy curriculum, we want everybody to get a chance to see that, not just one of us.
Dr. Bilch, do you feel like you have enough information to create a calendar for us around.
I think we can create a calendar for you, yes.
Very good. If you're good, I'm good. And so we'll move on to community engagement. We're running a little bit behind, so I want to get us back on track, but I don't know that there's a ton that's happened right now on community engagement, but just give you guys a chance to talk about, I know cover some of this in board member comments or reports, but if there's something that you didn't feel like you covered on community engagement.
So I believe that you mentioned at one of the last meetings that we're probably ready now, if we do go attend meetings, community meetings, that we're ready to get out there and invite you or Teresa to come and share information as well. That's worked well in the past. And then I have a question about the IRC quarterly collaboration meetings. I know that, I don't know if you're still, okay, so I know we both attend those typically, and then usually somebody from the district does as well. So I just wanted to confirm that.
So I think the other would be the DAC representative, and kind of tuning up where we are with who represents the board at DAC. If you want to make a change there, I think, was it you, Pepper?
Yeah, I had started with it, but first of all, I teach on Tuesday nights, and that tends to be when DAC meets. So that has, Terry graciously took over meeting with the DAC and being the liaison, and I thank you. And I teach again Tuesday night this semester, so I wouldn't be able to continue anyway. But I did want to bring that up, that there are a couple liaison spaces, not only the DAC, which is really vitally important to have a board member there. I feel strongly about that. But I will also be leaving the Pooter Learning Center Foundation Board, and I've already informed them of my they only meet once every, I want to say other month, but Mandy Hydock is usually at those meetings. So I don't know how important it is for you to have a board liaison there. We were just invited to be there. So I just want to put that out there on your radar, Dr. Pilch, on whether you feel there needs to be board representation there.
I guess the other one is the Student Rep Council, which I'm happy to stay on that unless anybody wants to be part of that as well. So those are also. So DAC, it is important, and
It's still meeting on Tuesdays.
well, I'm assuming so. I
I'm
mean,
assuming so too.
Yeah.
Stacy stepped out, but I
Yeah,
assume
and I'm
so.
happy to continue it. Last year was my first year on the DAC. But if anybody else wants to, be that as well, that's fine. I think it is important, I guess. What I found, I was a substitute for Julia when she was the DAC rep, and then for you. I think it is important to have someone that can be there consistently and make that commitment to be there all the time, just because you get to know the people, but also there's that, continuance of what they are talking about.
So it's, I should have said District Accountability Committee
Oh, sorry.
instead of just DAC. And so it's parents from most of our school, a representative from most of our schools. So it's, and then a few community members. So some community parents and a few principals.
And charters.
And, yeah, includes the charter, it includes all District 6 schools. And some staff, a couple of staff members. So that meeting is, their role is typically to approve, the district accountability plan, if we have a charter school application, they have a role in reviewing the charter school application. They haven't had to do that for several years. They do have, the first part of their session usually is with me, where I just give them some updates in the district and open it up to questions. And then we often will, Megan comes in when it's budget time and they give recommendations around the budget. You might remember Megan and DAC being there to give their recommendations around the budget. They also, they give input into the calendar. So, they're an important role. They are our parent and kind of staff and community group that give input into some of those big decisions around strategic plan, calendar, transportation, a lot of those things. So they do like having a school board member there. It's important to them.
I will say too, both Michael and I served on the DAC, and I do think that played a role in us, I don't want to speak for you, Michael, but a role in us running for school board. Because you see the inner workings a bit more of how the district works, especially with the accountability plan and what parents' concerns are. And I think having a school board member there, for me, it was Julia. I can't speak for you, Michael, on who it was, but to start having those conversations about, you're really interested, you seem like you're a leader, and would you consider maybe running? And so I think it's a really good committee to also tap new potential board members of parents that are very vested in the success of the district.
I would say if you want to know what, parents are thinking, this is the best group. Because these are parents who are super involved in their school. They know what's happening. They've already been on PTO or the SAC. They're just a very knowledgeable group about what is happening in the school, and oftentimes in the system. And so if you want to, and I'm pitching that because Natalie already has 2 committees, extra committees that she's doing. And Terry and I have plenty of places to be. In leadership, there are extra meetings that go along with that. I know you're glad to continue to do it, but and Pepper's leaving, so if there's anybody else that would like to jump in, it is a great opportunity.
It's typically on a Tuesday night. I think we start about 5:15 to 7.
It's typically the third Tuesday of the month, but they do change, and I don't think it's every single month.
It's not every month. I
Yeah.
think it's more like 5 or 6 meetings.
Yeah, and they typically start at 5:30 and go till 8?
No.
7:30?
7 or 7:30.
Oh, 7 or 7:30, okay.
I wouldn't be volunteering to go till 8.
Okay.
No. I think you're usually out there by 7 or 7.
Okay, 7, 7:15.
I'll go ahead and take that on.
You'll take that?
Mhm.
Okay.
If you can just give me a contact information of somebody. to-
Stacy will work with you, and Lindsay will
Okay.
give you all that, yeah.
Okay.
And if you need any substitutes, open it up. Kyle was going to go one day, and then that didn't work out, but any one of us can cover.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not okay to not show.
No.
Yeah, I mean, we need to
Yeah.
get it covered if we can.
Yeah.
If you can't, if you can't go on this one, because they count on us
Yeah.
being there.
Yeah, Tuesdays are hard for me. It's transition to the boys.
Yeah.
That's great, Taylor.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you, Taylor.
Thank you.
You said the third Tuesday of each.
Well, it has been typically. I don't know what they've set them for this year, but
Okay.
Lindsay and Stacy will get with you. And then was there the student
Council of
accountability,
Student
Council of
Reps.
Student Reps?
But I
So
would
Terry,
like
I think it'd be good if you
Yeah.
would stay, because I think we're going to see a new
Yeah.
principal sponsor of that.
Yeah.
So it'd be good to have you stay for continuity's sake,
Yeah,
I
I would
think.
appreciate that.
Yeah.
Thanks.
All right. Anything else on community engagement? Right, we're to our mill levy override consideration. So Dr. Filch, I'll let you lead off, but I don't know who else you,
Oh, I've got everybody helping out, So I'm happy to, Amy, where am I? Here we go, perfect. So I'm going to only start us off here, and then I'm going to kick it over to staff to provide some key information for you, and then former Mayor Tom Norton is going to present to you as well and share with you some additional information. So just a reminder that this was all part of our operational and organizational effectiveness focus area in the strategic plan. So all of the monitoring of the mill levy override and even the decision to implement the mill levy override came out of this focus area and the goals that fall under this focus area of operational and organizational effectiveness. Part of the mill has been to have that oversight committee to ensure that transparency and accountability to our community. So what we want to do tonight is we want to give you an overview of really what the dollars for the last 5 years have been spent on, which of those things would be ongoing costs in the future, and which of those things were a one-time cost that go away. And then we want to hear the recommendations from the Citizens Advisory Committee that came together this summer, and we'll bring Mr. Norton for that. So I think with that, I'm going to pass it over to our Chief Financial Officer, Megan Sponsler, to go ahead and get started with the information about what it is, and she's going to pass to some of her colleagues through the presentation.
All right, thank you, Dr. Pilch. I just wanted to give a quick overview of what the ballot language looked like when we first passed this in 2017. As you recall, there was a sunset after 7 years. The ballot language levied 10 additional mills on property taxes, and then we spent the mill levy dollars on these 5 big areas. So the first one, improving safety, security, and transportation, supporting academic and vocational programs, providing instructional materials and technology, attracting and maintaining a competitive workforce, and then, of course, sharing the revenues with our charter schools. I also wanted to just do a quick overview. I think people get so confused by this terminology of a bond versus mill levy override. And so the way I always think of it is a bond is like your mortgage. It is debt that you have to pay back over time. And we pay that debt back by levying taxes on property. So that's the bond. The mill levy override is additional operating revenue that comes into the district. And it's something that voters have to approve, of course, and we just saw those categories that we could use that mill levy override money for. But this is really for operational costs. And then I wanted to put this slide in that kind of shows over time how much we have collected in our mill levy override revenue. So the very first year, we said on the ballot language that we would collect $14 million. After that, since it was 10 mills of property tax, the revenues collected float with the assessed valuation of property. So over time, as properties increased in value, then we have been able to collect additional revenue. You'll see this peak here in 2021. That is because we had a taxpayer that paid their property taxes very, very late that year, so they were still on time for the tax, the assessor due dates. But for our fiscal year, it was collected the following fiscal year. So that makes it look like it's a big jump, and then we went back down. But if you look at in between, I think it would average out to be about 21 million. So I think Mr. Henson is next.
So Megan, can I ask a question first? Talk to me about the 24, 25, because we don't have, 23 even, we don't have assessed value yet on those. So talk to me about where those estimates have come from.
Sure. So I have worked with our county assessor, Brenda Donis, and she has given me some insight into where she thinks the property values might be. Of course, this is all very much an estimate. Who knows what will actually be the assessed value at that time? But these are just estimates based on what she sees the trends looking like into the future. So you can see there is a jump starting next year. This year will be pretty flat because this is not an actual assessment year. A year from now, properties will be revalued, and as we all expect, properties will probably be valued higher. So we expect to collect more revenue at that point.
Thank you, Megan. I'm Kent Henson, Assistant Superintendent of Support Services. So I deal obviously a lot with the bond issues, but then also with MLO, things that sometimes are supported by bond or mill levy override. So when the mill levy override was passed, our phone system here was ancient, and so we used MLO to update to a web-based phone system throughout the district. Snow removal equipment, you'll see some equipment on here. Generally our mode here is that we run our equipment until we can't get replacement parts. We've talked about buses earlier in the year. How long should you keep buses? There's, a safety issue with how long you keep buses, but we have purchased 57 new buses, which was greatly in need because our fleet averaged over 20 years of buses before the MLO. Our white fleet are the trucks that our plumbers and electricians and our IT people use to get around the district. So we've invested in those because some of those were 30 to 40 years old and taking on water. Access control, locks, hardwares, badges. So these are the things that affect our security system in doors and external doors in classrooms. Building automation systems gives us the ability to control temperatures in classrooms from a central location. So we'll get, phone calls, say room 172 in this building is hot. We can monitor it, see what's going on. Is it a whole wing of the building, or is it a room we can make adjustments? Boilers and chillers, we tried to get a lot of that in the bond, but there were some we got out in front with the MLO and did replacements in some schools because they needed them. Those were past their life expectancy. Window repair and replacement, we have some windows that are rotting out in the district, so those need to be replaced. Roofs, so far we've done 12 partial to full replacements in the districts. A number of those we've got best grant matches for those. And then for security campus monitors, and the Raptor system is our security system that helps does background checks as you enter the building and other things. And then security cameras. We started, and just recently we have a security camera package out for 9 schools. It's just going out this week. And then ongoing costs, so all those are things that eventually wear out and have to be replaced. They all have a life expectancy. So our annual replacement on the phone system, snow removal, bus replacement, we're in a pretty good place that we just are going to need to be on a repair recycle. Same with our white fleets. And then access controls, locks, hardware, badges, those are all things that are used every single day. And so they wear out, so we need to be able to replace those. Boilers and chiller repairs as we need them. And then you can see, all the way down to security cameras, maintain and replace those as needed once we get them installed. Dr. Dattery?
Thank you, Mr. Henson. I'm Stacy Dattery. I am Assistant Superintendent for our elementary J8 schools and academic achievement. And
Stand in front of the camera.
pardon?
Stand in front of the camera.
Do not. Do not.
Yeah. We're watching kids. Is this one here?
Okay, so is this good?
I think you're good.
Okay,
You're good.
awesome. So, and as another big chunk, we know for our MLO, we passed dollars that would help in our academic and our vocational programming, and those included these different areas from after school and summer school programming, critical to the ongoing work of many of our kids, and continuing their learning. Another is advanced manufacturing, and many of you talked about that a little bit earlier, of all of the vocational supports and the career and technical education. And one of the industries that we had not yet been able to provide an opportunity for our students was in this area. So at Central, we infused dollars. It's been an incredible program for many of our kids and provides them another avenue. AVID, we had AVID secondary in all of our middle and high schools. We had that for several years, but it's a program that required quite a lot of additional expense and in the way of teachers and programming. So we've been able to expand that. We are now a district that is AVID district-wide, and that's a pretty phenomenal opportunity for many of our kids. We now actually this year, every single elementary, every single one of our K-8 schools, in addition to all of our secondaries, as it's always been, or for several years it's been. Business and Community Partnership Administrator, that is Mr. Nelson Rodriguez. That is really the only position that was funded for our administrator position, thank you, out of the MLO dollars. But that's been for our internships, apprenticeships, just continuing that connection from career and workforce, and for getting our students involved in all that. College board fees, we know that these things can be barriers for many of our kids. If they cannot pay the fees to be in IB or take an AP class and then take that assessment, those all come with expenses. PSAT and SAT, if they take it outside of the windows that is provided by the state. Being able to do all of that and take that barrier away from our students has been critical, and gotten many more of our kids involved in not only the programs, but then taking the tests and getting them onto college courses. Another college course opportunity for students is just to take that concurrent enrollment right while they're right here with us in high school. And we have over 1,000 of our students taking advantage of that, and that's been incredible. More and more opportunities for them. Early childhood education pathway. So much like the advanced manufacturing pathway at Central, this was another pathway that we needed to open up and get in place. And you know that is now moving to our CTE center, and so continuing that pathway has been a great opportunity for many of our students who are just saying they want to be in a field of education and particularly early childhood. Likewise, at our lab, we're a STEM school at Northridge, and yet that E part wasn't as robust as it needed to be. Our MLO dollars have been able to fund getting that lab in place and really making that a much more robust part of the STEM program at Northridge. Same thing when you think about, well, we've got STEM at Northridge. We are an arts magnet program and at Central. And the music lab and the auditorium certainly has needed some additional TLC. And because of our MLO dollars, we've been able to do that. And it's been so incredible. Our kids and our staff there have been very grateful for those additional dollars. Similarly, being able to get students more industry certificates, that's not something we were able to do really. Those take dollars to be able to do that for our kids. Didn't really start that until our MLO dollars passed and Dr. Pilch really put that in place. And then our student recovery program, while that was started with a community member, that is something that we've been able to take over as we should. It was funded many, many years, as you know. I think I can say by Mr. Bob Twain, and we've been able to take that on and continue that really great program for our kids. So almost all those things are ongoing costs. I mean, all of these are about what we do for students. How do we continue to, every year, kids will need those extended learning opportunities in that after school and summer programming. The advanced manufacturing program, we do fund our teachers' salaries out of our MLO for that. So as I said, the administrator, which is on here as well, that's the only administrator, but we do have a few teaching salaries. So being able to continue that program is huge. Continuing AVID, those are ongoing costs for the teachers and the program itself. The college board fees, every year there's new kids, right? So these are just this is like kid intensive and MLO. Our MLO dollars are able to continue to fund this for our students' concurrent enrollment. Every year, kids being able to take those college courses. And I think what's so cool is you heard that Northridge student on our MLO video that was done. And he was just saying how important that was for him to be able to take that and get him accelerated on into high school. Into college. He was very articulate, and I know many of our kids feel that way. Same thing can be said for industry certificates. Some kids don't want to go on to college, but they do want to go right into the workforce. And that's what the industry certificates are able to provide for our students. And then again, the student recovery program, ongoing cost every year, students benefiting from that. And then our investment, just ongoing investment in career pathways and technical education. We're pretty fortunate to be able to have a CTE center, but continuing to be able to support that. And in addition to each of our schools, our high schools is important. So that's the academic and the vocational support. And then that third big chunk was around instructional materials and technologies. So this is kind of everything that supports what's going on in the classroom. And pretty much everything on this screen, it ages out. I mean, there's nothing that, I would love to say that a computer's going to last forever or those textbooks last forever, but they just don't. So that's really what you see a lot of on this screen. One-to-one devices, you can see over 16,000 devices. And that's for students, and then staff devices over 700. So our MLO dollars are alive and well and at work in this area. Not only, it's good to have the computers, but obviously there's that back end to make it work. And so we've been able to update and replace our tech infrastructure and document cameras for classrooms, just to update all that, and the interactive projectors. All of these things, get updated. We need to keep current with that. And so we've been able to do that in many, many, many classrooms. So that's kind of all that. Those first several bullets are all about the technology and keeping up and being able to provide that for our students here in District 6, which prior to our MLO, it just wasn't. And again, we know that like one computer for every 5 students or something silly. I hardly even remember those days, but they were here. And then the last 3 bullets are really around curriculum, from AP curriculum updates to every core area has been able to be updated in these last 5 years. And this literacy update is what elementary literacy, we're right in the middle of implementing that. And so being able to do that is huge. We will then be looking at some of our different elective, like music and art and just anything that they may need. Sometimes it's knowing actual curriculum, and sometimes, like you think, music, just continuing to support with instruments, things like that too, for them in different areas. And then this starts, oh, well, I guess that's the next slide. And then those things start over, right? Like those don't last forever. So all of these things, I love the statistics of about 5,000 devices per year. And 700, the replacement of staff devices in terms of about 700 devices per year. So just knowing, the infrastructure will need updated. That's just kind of some ongoing costs. So we will need to stay up on that. Document cameras, all of those things, they will not last forever. And so being able to update that and as we need to, and to keep, make sure that our students have what they need in that area. So with about 22,000 students, 5,000 a year is about right when you think about that. And then if we even just think of a 7-year cycle for our curriculum, we are just about ready to just flip right back into that in another 2 years, right? So this just being able to continue. Otherwise, I don't know if you remember, some of you might remember, and it's not anything that I'm super proud of, but when you had to make a lot of decisions, we were getting to where some of our curriculum was 12 and 13 years old that our students were using, and that was just our reality at the time. So people are pretty thrilled and grateful every time we talk about what they are able to have and have in their classroom to support them as teachers with kids. So, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Dattery. So this next big topic is around compensation, and this is really around attracting and maintaining a competitive workforce. So one of the very first things we did after the mill levy passed was we gave all of our hourly employees $1 an hour increase. Now, we didn't ever take that dollar away, so that has been an ongoing cost and will continue to be an ongoing cost, and especially in these days where we need to be more competitive to hire quality staff. We know that we have to keep really working hard on this area, and the mill levy override has been just extremely helpful in meeting those needs. And then finally, the charter schools, that last bullet on the ballot language was that we would share our mill levy override revenue with our charter schools. We have been doing that, and honestly, they have been spending their money on the same things that we have. So the need is pretty much the same across the system. Doesn't matter if you're a charter or not. We all have the same needs. And then this slide, we did a little bit of brainstorming, and we talked about what is it that we currently have in place, and especially as a result of some of our federal grant money that has come in, that we know that we really need to continue to do. And so as our mill levy is hopefully renewed, these are things that we would add back into mill levy dollars. Of course, school counselor and social worker positions. The Online Learning Academy has been completely grant funded, so we would need to find a way to support that. Student to teacher ratios, in other words, class size. We have been able to really work hard to reduce class sizes, but that's because we have grant money to do that. Our attendance advocate positions and then parent and family advocate positions, we have found those to be very beneficial, and so we would like to continue that. And with this, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Norton.
Thank you. And as all of you know, I have been the last month talking to the committee that we set up to look at what the thoughts of the community were regarding a mill levy override at the timing. So My objective today is to get each of you to grill me about what does this mean to the community and how do we resolve any of those problems. I will tell you that we had 2 meetings. We had good input from those 2 meetings. And I do have the same sheet I shared with all of you here that talked about each of these items. And I come from a place where I look at these kinds of things that were put up there from the staff of what they've done with the dollars and what they need. And I want to digress slightly. When I first started with the school district, I was on a couple of blue ribbon committees, and this was even before Deirdre was here. And my objective was to show them that they had enough money and they didn't need a lot of money, but they needed a lot of investment in facilities. Buildings were pretty bad, and being an engineer, of course, that's where I centered. So in going through that and looking at, actually rode on some of the buses, which was scary, and really trying to figure out, okay, where do we go with this? And my picture in my mind is, well, first we need to get a mill levy override so we can get the individual items that we need to make construction work. Then a bond issue, replace the buildings, so we got a place to do that. And then now we're at a point where we are well on the way for replacing buildings, not there. If you'll remember when we did that, that bond issue was 50% of what the report said we needed for building. And so we did $400 million. We're getting a little more out of it than that. So we've got those facilities now. And we need to be able to maintain the existing facilities, which is the major part of this, as you heard, and provide the curriculum necessary. So talking about those things to the committee, and they were really curious about the taxes and what that meant to the people and what it would cause them. This is really not a tax increase. And we had some discussions about, well, that's semantics. It depends on how you look at it. If it wasn't there, and you put it on, yeah, it's a tax increase. But if it wasn't there, then what would you, as a board, remove from your budget? Because that's really what it means. What are the items there that are not, or do not fit with your idea of good spending for the district? Obviously, we need to focus on staff and needs of the students. Hiring and maintaining teachers is a serious problem, and I've always thought it was a serious problem. And it's really not much better now because we're in the lower part of the Northern Colorado hiring status. We don't pay as much as many of the other schools. So having good programs and good facilities helps kind of take up that gap, but we still need to work on that. You can read all of these yourself and see that and understand that the district's made significant progress. But that's an ongoing progress. And one of the items that I would suggest to you is there was a concern about inflation. And what does that mean? Well, if you look at the inflation to individuals and how much things are costing, it's critically important to people right now. And a lot of people are worried about it. But I suggest that you as a board ought to be worried about it too, because replacing those computers and providing those services are going to have to be paid with inflated dollars as well. So if we don't look at it from that perspective, we probably will have a serious budget problem in the near future. I think the district has, in at least the people I talk to and the community organizations that I attend or am a member of, people are really appreciative of what the district has done and feel that they have spent the dollars properly. So, questions about this slide or questions about what you think the public believes and thinks about this program?
I have a question.
Sure.
The current mill levy is set to sunset at the end of next year, 2023.
2024 is what it actually sunset. The issue around what happens if it sunsets in 2024 and then you don't get money. The problem is that you would have to do, because your budgets come due at a time when you would not know whether that's going to be there or not. So you would have to do essentially two budgets. You'd have to say, okay, we assume that if it passes the next time you run it, if they did it next year, that budget would carry you through 2024, 2025 for that budget cycle. But you don't have knowledge of whether that's there until the end of that period of time. So it's not that it's that we couldn't do it next year. And I would probably say, if you feel like it can't be done this year, you better do it next year or you're going to be in real trouble, budget-wise, because inflation will get you for sure. So it's the ability to do a uniform. I've got a slide later, and I'll show you about historically what the assessments have been and what the county assessor has done and what the ups and downs are and how that averages out and how that then goes into what Megan has for dollars and how those dollars can then be uniformly spent, and you don't have to do cuts with people or programs and then come back and pick them back up. That's the problem that I see with doing that. Did that answer your question?
It did, and then on the, where it says to maintain the current MLO, how often does the assessor do property evaluations?
Every 2 years, they do property. And then right now, the assessments that I talked to her about that she's doing right now will be the ones that will be on your assessment bill next year, which will obviously be paid in the following year. You get an assessment, and then you have a period where you can challenge that assessment. And that assessment is made and your bill is sent out, and then the following April and whatever is split so you can pay those.
Is that both, do they do that every 2 years, personal and business?
All assessments.
Okay.
And the assessments are, let me talk about that when I get to that, those 2 or 3 slides that show what she's doing, because she broke out those commercial and so forth. Other questions? I think looking at the challenge you have is looking at the big picture and figuring out what's the best answer. I personally have looked at this over a number of years and have figured kind of where I think the board needs to go. But it's your decision, and you're the one that have to answer the phone.
Tom, has the county assessor factored in the growth, the new properties being built and stuff? Is that in your forecasted budget outside of just value increases? It
is. She factored in the growth. Wander over in front of the camera, sorry. Okay. She factors in the growth. She looks at oil and gas, which is almost impossible to project, as you know, and commercial and industrial. And she talks to Upstate Colorado and their economic development plan. All of those kinds of things go into her assessment. She makes a lot of assumptions on how that's going to go, but an awful lot of it is based on historically how has it been.
Yeah, we sat through that Chamber of Commerce deal, and they're talking about the growth of Weld County, and obviously that means an improvement of a lot of agricultural land from an ag standpoint. The tax is way different to a residential property, but
well, that's true. Ag is the least revenue you get. Residential is next, and then commercial, and then industrial, and then oil and gas, and the issue around that is that as you grow and you have all of the development there, new people are moving in, and those people are having kids. So you're going to grow as a school district, and you have to be able to maintain with that growth yourself. So it's not, I mean, that's one of the reasons that the property value or the property assessments and how they rise keeps pretty close to the expenses that you have to deal with. The Citizens Advisory Group tried to come up with, some of the negatives, the timing of the ballot issue and the economy and fear of a recession and rising property assessments. That's a distinct emotional reaction of the public. They are hurting now. They are saying, hey, it's costing me more money. This, Taylor and I talked a little bit when we visited. It's difficult. And I don't say that I don't agree with that. But the problem is the timing makes it a lot worse for you and a lot worse for the kids that you're having to be responsible to get educated if you don't keep it even and move forward in a way that sets that budget process that Megan can handle it and not have to do the ups and downs. I'm sure you know how to make the cuts in the budget, but they're not much fun, at least my experience in the past. So that's a real one. I think it's more emotional than it is real, because I don't think the next 2 years, the 10 mills is the same and the assessment is the same. So for 2 years, it's not going to be any change in dollars in their pocket. After that, the assessments will be different. The 10 mills will be the same. The assessments will be different, and that what that growth is and how much that affects a school district relative to that income is what the assessor was trying to help me figure out when I was talking to her. And it's a lot of assumptions to get to there. K-12 is getting more funding from the state. Well, the school district got more funding, not just from the state, but from the feds. They got, you know the monies that you received. You had 2 systems to run. You had to buy more computers. And fortunately, those dollars came in extremely handy. One of the problems is that the monies that are coming in from the feds and the single one from the state, I mean, I'm mixing the two. Let me just say the single one from the state was an income to you that backfilled dollars that were supposed to be a part of the per pupil funding. And so that helped fill some of that gap and kept you from having to get into the reserves to provide those programs. The federal dollars are the same way. They run through 2024, if I understand the staff correctly. And then they will go. If the 2024 dollars from the feds go away and the 2024 dollars from the mill levy override are not there, you get a double whammy in terms of a budget reevaluation and budget changes. There's a lack of transparency. I don't know what to tell you about that. I would hope that there's, more effort all the time for transparency. I don't disagree with that. I guess I went down that same path when I first got involved and got on blue ribbon committees. I said, I don't know what's going on there, but I just can't, this stuff doesn't make sense. The more time I spent, the better that transparency was. And so it's very, very difficult to make that happen. But I think the school district has tried very hard to do it. Isn't there? If people think there's not transparency, then you have to work on it. That's all I can say. Yes.
Could you share with us the makeup of the Citizens Oversight Committee, or maybe Dr. Pelch, what types of folks are serving on there and how do they join?
While you're doing that, Mr. Norton, I'll just share that we invited anyone who served on the Citizens Advisory Committee for the bond, anyone who served on the Citizens Advisory Committee for the last mill levy override, both committees. We invited the mill levy override Oversight Committee. We invited the Business Advisory Council. Who else? I think that pretty much covers it. So, there were far more people invited than, what we're able to attend in the middle of the summertime. But I'll let.
But I was also wondering about the mill levy override oversight committee that has been serving for the past 5 years and will continue to have.
Yeah, they were invited to participate in this as well.
And was asking, in the statement that there's a lack of transparency, do you feel like the oversight committee that we have had is a good representation of our community? And how do people?
I don't think the mill levy oversight committee is the issue with the lack of transparency. I just think that in general, if people don't have information, they do feel like it's a lack of transparency. And there's just, more and more transparency all the time is needed, and people want more and more information all the time. And so I think it's more of a general statement, probably mismatch over it may be about the mill levy override, but I think it's both. I think it's just, there's a lack of transparency, so people are not going to vote for the mill levy override.
How often do they meet?
Three times a year. And then they come and give a report to the board, and so that's how they publicly report out. They did write, they have written articles for the Tribune in the past as well, the Oversight Committee. And we would recommend that we continue with an Oversight Committee for the mill levy override if it is to be continued. I'm done.
The sheet that I gave Ms. Bash was to look at all the people that were invited. And not all of them came to both meetings, and I don't know, the meetings were 25 to 30 people total. We did have a number of staff members there that could provide information on the first one, and the second one, we pretty much just had discussions about what should be done and what the problems were. So that between us, did we? Mm-hmm. Okay. Anybody else? Well, we've had some discussion about the difference between the bond issue and the MLO. The bond issue is the bricks and mortar, and the MLO is the getting it done. It's kind of like Megan said, there's not a fine line because there are MLO dollars that replace chillers, and there's some dollars that go to some salaries, but not the base. So but basically that's what happens. In the MLO, nothing had been done for 30 years in any significant amount. That's not including the fact that you did get a grant and build Prairie Heights, and you've done some of those kinds of things, but nothing to the extent that was necessary to replace some of these major facilities and build a new school. Increasing the length of the sunset to 10 years is being too long. And the question was, it was 7 years the first time, why 10 years? Is that just so you get 10 years this time and you say, oh gee, it's worked for 17 years now, why don't we just forget it? I don't think that the people of Weld County will ever say, we're just going to give it to you forever. They'll always want to vote on it. I think it's your decision whether you want to go 7 years or 10 years. I recommended the 10 years simply because of the budgeting process and how you need to really do 2, 5, and 10-year budgets to look at long-term situations. But you can discuss that amongst yourselves and decide what you want to do there. It's not a fixed amount. Going less than 7 years, I would say, would be not very responsible. But going to 10 years just allows better fiscal management over a longer period of time. What else we got here? Well, this is one that, questions that were asked about, okay, what's really the cost of it? Well, $400,000 house at the point, the legislature set this residential assessment rate at 6.95 mils, so that times the value becomes the assessed value, and that at 10 mils becomes $278.05 for the total year. Now, that, like I say, that is not going to change the next 2 years, but when it does change and the average house is $500,000 and the legislature leaves the assessment rate at the same, it will be more. But I don't know that we have any, well, I know we don't have any control over the legislature. I was there long enough to know that even when I was there, I had no control, so. A little sideline. Commercial property is at 29%. Next year it goes to 27.4, I think. Is that right? And so, right now, it's $290,000 or $2,900. So those properties, commercial properties, pay a large share of the assessment. Oil and gas, we don't have on there, but it's assessed at 100%. So there's no question but what that is the major factor in funding the school. You know, one of the things I'll show you in a minute is the difficulty of that going up and down. So questions about that? I know there were some, when I talked to you individually about, you know, what the committee had said, that was one of the questions that you had.
Those
Yes.
are annual numbers, correct?
Those are annual numbers, yes. Yeah, I guess we didn't do put per year on there. Yes.
One question's probably going to be a Megan question, but how much of, I guess, the total dollars that were collected last year was based off of the mill levy, and if you can give that in dollars and percent? Do you have that?
I would have to get that for you.
Okay.
Got that off the top of my head.
Okay.
Yeah, you did ask me that, and I didn't get it, because I was quoting something that I didn't have the full answer on, for sure, so I neglected to pass that on and get it.
Can you repeat that question, Taylor? I didn't hear it.
I'm just curious what the total dollars were out of the whole budget for last year came from the mill levy, and I'd like to know what that would be off of total dollars as well as what the total percent is.
So.
It's close to 10, all right?
It's,
Little over
well,
10.
no, we're 16 to 20 million in some years, and then up to, she's got us projected going up to almost 30 million. But I think what we're talking about, really the percent of operation, you know, total operating dollars, not without grants, I think, is what you're talking about.
Yeah,
Just whatever is coming from your mill levy.
When you're doing the
dollars.
percent, though, the percent of budget, you would mean the percent of operating dollars.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah, that's because what I was talking to you about was percent of the total budget. That's really not, because there's no give or take on those grant dollars and.
Well, and bond dollars.
And bond dollars, you
Yeah.
can't have those in there because that's a fixed amount. So anyway, it has to be on operating dollars.
Oh, you were saying
It varies
10%.
from something like 15 million to 27 million.
Well, yeah.
When you said 10, you meant 10%, right? So that if it's roughly 10%?
8 to 10, somewhere there. But if I remember, I don't remember what the budget was exactly off the top of my
Yeah,
head. It's easy to-
I think when you pull bond out and ESSER dollars out, I think you're probably right around there, too. That's rough numbers in my head, but my chief financial officer knows better than to guess. She lets me guess, but when it comes from her, it better be spot on, right?
I don't know if this is interesting to anyone, but just if we have the dollars for a $400,000 house, it's about $5 a month increase per $100,000. So if you have a $300,000 house, you're paying $17 a month. If you have a $400,000 house, you're paying $23 a month. So just, I don't know, that was
Right.
interesting
With
to
10
me.
mills, yes.
Yeah.
As you go up higher, more expensive.
That would be true. But I was thinking for like an average homeowner whose home maybe was worth $250 and now it's worth $4, you know, what kind of an increase are we talking about for the average family per month?
Well, the difference in that also means because the legislature changed the assessment rate from 7.2 to 6.94, that decreases from what they were paying before, but the assessed value is going up. So it's almost like you got to ask at a point in time to be able to have the right answer.
Yeah.
So I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm just trying to make sure you talk about the same thing. Okay. Recommendation, through all of the information there, is that the Board of Education move forward this November with the penalty override with the sunset. And I'll leave the sunset up to you. But I think an additional thing that I need to tell you is that there was a question in my mind whether the historic polling information was adequate for the economic times. So I have hired a polling company, and they will have results for your meeting on the 22nd. And I will present those to you for your consideration and additional information to have an idea what the community as a whole says and looks at from that perspective. There was a lot of ups and downs and a lot of, yeah, we need it, yeah, we ought to do it, yeah, but, you know, those kinds of things. And I think it's important to move, you know, for you to have all of the information available and be able to talk to your constituents and know you feel comfortable and doing the best job you can for the kids. That's kind of where we all are in this business.
So I don't, Mr. Norton, I don't know that you shared that we polled back in April, and we polled very favorably for passing the mill levy override, and more favorably than we did with the original in 2017, or even more favorably than the polling in 2019 for the bond. So that poll would say to us that we should go forward. It was that poll that caused me to bring together the Citizens Advisory Committee. Prior to that, I was really of the mindset similar to the cons of saying, you know, it's just not the right time. There's been a lot of controversy in public education. We're just coming out of the pandemic, and people are still feeling scalded by that. We're in a recession. Gasoline is very expensive. But then once we saw the polling, it became apparent we at least needed to begin to have the conversation with some of our community members who have helped to inform this decision in the past, and then bring it to you all.
Right, that's what I meant by having, historically, we had some data, but
Yeah.
is it really accurate for today?
Yeah, we're 4 months past that data now.
Right. And
Yeah.
normally, things aren't going to change that much, but it just seems like the world is changing faster than I can keep up with it, so I said, okay. I'll do that. General questions? I'd like to go on to, I think that's next
It's
on the...
ballot language.
Oh, the ballot language, okay.
Yeah.
Bring that up.
Can I just add something?
Sure.
Having been, since I was at both meetings, the first meeting, there was a larger number of people at the first meeting.
Yes.
And even though we didn't do the structured, it was overwhelming. Yes, you should move forward with the next meeting, and yes, it's smart to go forward with this. The second meeting with the structured protocol of gathering information with the pros and cons, I felt like at the second meeting, I just wandered around and listened. And I think that what you need to know is that the people that were in the room were just, I mean, they were very thoughtful about all of their comments and paying attention and listening. So I just think that's important to remember, that there were a lot of people bringing their minds to this process, and so I appreciate that. And then also just before you move on to the ballot language and all that, I just want to tell you, Tom, that I so appreciate your facilitation and your commitment to this, because, you know, you've committed a lot of time to this, and I think just the objectivity that you bring to this has been invaluable to all of us. And I think that, I mean, I've been part of this since the very first mill levy, and every time I hear more information, it makes more sense to me. And so I just appreciate the way that you are trying to address all those informational pieces that if you're not a finance person and you don't do this all the time, that I just want you to know how much I appreciate your commitment to this and your knowledge, and I just want all of you to know that the people that were in the room were truly and truly invested in trying to give us the best information that we could take forward to making that decision. So just wanted to say that before you move to the
Well,
ballot.
thank you, and thank you for attending those meetings, because the board needed a representative there, and thank each one of you for meeting with me individually as we kind of summarize that. Okay, ballot language. This is a proposed ballot language that we are doing the polling based on, and I think it's basically what you ought to read. It's without raising taxes, shall the existing voter-approved 10 mills of School District 6 be extended from 23, and in this case it says 33 because it's 10 years. And then I will be polling some 10-year versus 7-year information, and you can change that up until when you vote on the 22nd. If you vote in favor of it, you can change that. Most of the rest of this, I think, is pretty well what you've heard today from the staff, where the money will be spent and what the basic
So there's a lot in this ballot language, moreover, than what we had the last time we ran this. That's because these things all polled really well. So the language is written to follow that poll. This has also gone through legal counsel, but it can also, we can also work on different language if that's the will of the board, if you do decide to go forward with this. There's a little bit more language that goes with it.
You have a question, Tim?
Yeah, my question was just about the charter schools. It says as authorized as of July 1st, 2022. So does that mean that if any new charters applied and became schools in the 10 years, they would not receive that money?
Correct. That's what that means. And that is what we did with this mill as well. And that tracks with state law. What, Megan?
We are confirming that.
Oh, okay. So maybe there have been changes that may adjust that. Okay.
Right, I don't necessarily want to go through and read this to you individually, but if you feel like you want to wait for a minute and read a particular part of it and talk about it, or have it read, I can do that. I just...
This is the language that would include the requirement for the Oversight Committee. And of course, the audit.
The Oversight Committee.
Yeah.
It's, but it's timing what the money's spent for the Oversight Committee and the inclusion of the existing charters. No questions or comments relative to that right now? Okay.
And for you all, as well as the public, these slides have all been posted to the board agenda. I know they weren't there earlier. We were still waiting on some stuff from the assessor and wanted to get all of that in there correctly. And so, but they are posted to the agenda now, so you will have future reference to them.
Mr. Norton, I would just have
Yes.
one quick question. I know there was polling that was taken in March and April.
Yes.
And you talked about getting recent, is this more recent polling that you,
It will go into the field tomorrow. The questions will be asked. The results will be presented to you at your meeting on the 22nd
Okay.
with overhead, and anything I get prior to that meeting, I may give you a preliminary, say, I think this is what it says, but I can't get the final until it's just time-wise.
How was this polling done? Because I hadn't
The
heard any.
the polling that was done originally,
Mhm.
the school district did that based on their own information and questioning us to where they would go and whether they needed to get somebody like me to try and talk to the public and find out what's going on.
So what I mean is, how was the poll conducted?
So we contracted with Strategies 360, and the gentleman who actually led the polling is actually Greeley West, I think, graduate. Yes, Greeley West graduate and grew up here in Greeley. But they work with us on designing the questions, and then they call. So they call cell phones as well as landlines, and they called. Their sample was just over 400, I believe. And, so they have to get all the way through the questioning for that person's comments to count. So if at any point the individual on the phone terminates, then whatever they've said so far does not go into the polling. So they do a cross-reference of registered voters, parents, community members, and they're pretty darn accurate. During the first mill, we came in, well, I'm not going to guess. They were we came in, I think, higher than what they polled during the first mill. But, they're pretty darn accurate. When we ran it in 2016, they said, you're just going to come right under the 50% you need, and sure enough, we did. So we actually beat out the polling this last time around and came in with a higher yes vote than what the polling had predicted. But, I think it's wise for the campaign committee or the dollars that would be for the campaign committee to do the additional polling. We're 3 months out from that, and it'll give us more information about where our community is and
When
How
was
they
the
feel.
poll conducted? The last one, the first, is there?
That one that's being done now,
No, the first one, when?
early April.
early April. Actually, questions were in March, weren't they?
We worked on the questions in March, yes. Yeah.
So what you do with those, Taylor, is you hire somebody that's professional to do the polling, and then they develop the questions. You tell them, okay, this is what we want to know. We want to know, is this going to pass? Is it going to make sense? Is this, and you go through and have those questions. I did the same thing in the poll that I'm running. I talked to them individually, but I was the only one involved in developing the questions. A lot of them were around some of the same issues that were here, but like, for example, polling for 7 or 10 years wasn't on the other one, and it is on this one.
Yeah, that's a good idea to add that.
So some of those kinds of things that came from the Citizens Committee, I did add on to this poll.
So do you remember what the percent, and I apologize, I'm just a very numbers person, but what was the percent saying yes versus saying no in your poll in March? Do you remember?
On the original one, it was about 67, 68% positive. As I recall, I will dig it out and share those numbers with you. And the reason I hesitate a little bit
We
is
will
that-
reshare those with you. They were in the slides that were shared from the Citizens Advisory Committee, but we'll reshare them with you so you have them.
And we'll have the updated ones next meeting.
I just have one more question.
Sure.
The current one expires in 2023, or you told me earlier 2024? Because that says 2023 up there.
It's the year 2023,
To be
but
extended.
it stops early 2024. Fiscal years.
Yeah, it's the fiscal year of '23. That's part of the problem with that.
Okay.
But, yeah, it's,
Is that like October or September, October 1 to September 30th or something like that? Is that a fiscal
well,
year?
the state budget is January,
Oh,
is June to June.
okay.
And I don't remember when your budget is based on report to the state in October.
Well, our student count is October. So, Kyle, you're right. The board will certify the mill levy in December of 2023, and then we would collect that in 2024. But then we have half a year there.
Like the back half, zero.
Yes.
So it would be
Wait,
school
fiscal
year
year's fall,
2023,
yeah.
2024 would be the last year that we would receive it, right?
So then why is the, can we go back to where the calendar was up, or the years were up there? Why is it that there was more than 7 years displayed on there?
That's the assessed value. If it were to continue, that's the
Projected
assessor's
revenue.
projected revenue if the mill levy override were to continue.
Okay.
If it, yeah, if it was to continue, then you would pick these two up.
Yeah, it's an
This
estimate.
one would be all the same,
Long-term
and these two,
projection.
that's why this one is still an estimate because of the assessed value. These are estimates because of the assessed value and whether it's continued or not.
That's also where you can see we collected a little over 22 million last year. So
Right.
then percentage of our budget is around 10%.
Yeah, Megan shot me the number. It's actually, the mill levy override is 8% of our budget right now.
That's the number I thought we were working on.
And we collected just over 21 million last year. I think it's important to point out that Megan, and check me on this, please, but we were able to carry over some of the mill levy override dollars, for example, for computer replacement, because we had ESSER dollars to purchase devices during the pandemic. So the spending, there is some flux in the spending due to using ESSER dollars for some things that mill levy over dollars might have been used for, which allowed us then to do more with those mill levy override dollars. For example, security cameras at the elementary schools. Initially, we didn't think we'd have enough mill levy override dollars to do cameras at the elementary schools, and now we're able to do that.
Anything else you want to go back and go by? You go through this.
You
start
have-
with Mine goes and you think, oh, I
Yeah,
should ask.
and you have 2 more slides about assessment, Mr. Norton.
Yes,
Oh, oops,
I'd
I
like
missed
to-
it.
Questions and discussions, I guess.
Oh, it just got out of place.
Yeah, there we go. So we skipped the slide that was questions and discussion, because I guess we didn't skip it, we did it without the slide.
Yeah.
This is the Will County Assessor's history value. And the reason that I wanted to show this, and I'm sorry it wasn't here earlier to get into your packet, but you can see that the vacant land in minerals are way down flat, doing hardly anything. The next graph there is the state assessed, and the next one is industrial, which is not real high. The next one is the oil and gas is hard to see the difference in the blue and the black, I'm sorry.
It sure is.
I agree with,
I think the giant check mark looking thing, is that oil and gas?
I
Yes.
think that's black, the big one. that
The
goes-
oil and gas is the one that goes.
Goes-
Yeah,
COVID down.
it's a highly variable one. It's
COVID
not
down
the-
and Biden up? Is that-
What's that?
Yeah.
Well, the reason I wanted to show you that is the rest of them seem to be able to go reasonably well. And you look at residential, which is the one you're most concerned about from individuals, how every assessment year it changes. And it will continue to do that. That's a 2-year stretch that it changes, and then there's an assessment, then it stays the same, and then there's an assessment, and then it stays the same. Well, it stays the same this year, and then they'll do the assessment, and then the assessment will go there, and it'll be payment in the following year. But as you can see, that highly variable is oil and gas, and that oil and gas one, I think everybody knows what that is. That oil and gas assessment for your district this year, because it's based on production, is up by $500 million. But last year, it was down by $400 million. I mean, it's kind of, you can't trust it to be something that you do your budget on. The rest of them, you can pretty well tell what those assessments will be. And that's part of the reason that I think it makes sense to go forward with it. And it makes even the reserve fund even more important for you to keep an adequate reserve fund so that that particular one goes crazy. You still got an ability to do a budget. And the rest of them stay pretty uniform. Okay, let's look at the other. This is a similar one. You can see the amount. In this case, how much oil and gas was 38% in 22. The state assessed is very small. Minerals, industrials, residential and commercial is 29%. So when you talk about the value of the house and the assessment is going to affect it, there's no question about that. But it probably isn't as volatile as some of the others are. And I asked the treasurer to do this for me just so I could get a better feel for the big picture. Does that cause more questions than it answers? No, yeah. Well, you were frowning at it.
I have a question on this.
Sure.
So I guess I just need to understand this, like, in that last column, you have your 3%, 38% and whatnot. So we're saying the blue section, 38% of the entire mill levy came from that section of dollars? Is that how I'm reading this? Okay. So if you go back one screen, what is the one that said exempt? What was that one identifying?
That's property that's exempt from taxes.
There's property
Okay.
that's
Like
exempt
churches
from
and
taxes.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate
All,
that.
yeah, non-profits, religious organizations, all of those kinds of things are exempt from property tax for school purposes.
School districts.
The schools themselves,
School
right?
districts, yes.
School districts are nonprofits, right?
Yeah, school districts, nonprofit. At least I hope you're running it that way.
Tom, I have a question.
Yes.
It appears to me, too, that the vacant land value is going down probably because vacant land is decreasing in
Yes.
in our area. Is that correct? That we're going to see those values continue to decline because
Well,
we just don't have that
only
much vacant
because-
land?
Well, only because that vacant, it's usually either agriculture or some other assessment. Now, if it's agriculture, it's very low, and then vacant land is just, yeah, it's going to be lower and lower because they're going to infill
Right.
property.
Okay.
Because there's vacant land that can't be used as agriculture because it's in the middle of the city or in the middle of a development. Well, as it says, thank you. Find this to be fun, as some people would think I'm nuts, but it's not only fun, but I think it's probably one of the most important things that the city of Greeley and the city of Evans and Will County can spend their time on, because schools are really a lot of the employment. They have to be run correctly. And so you have a very difficult job, and I hope that I've been able to impart some information and intelligence to you to allow you to make a decision that will carry School District 6 forward for the next 7 to 10 years. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Norton. Appreciate you being here tonight. Any other questions from board members for Mayor Norton, or you may have questions for Megan or Stacy or Ken or Dr. Pilch? I had one. I just started doing the math, Megan, looking at it, and Stacy. It appears that we did not buy textbooks for about, or buses for about roughly 10 years. Is that about right? So, and I start thinking back, before 2009, and then when the legislature began removing $20 million a year, $18 million a year, whatever it was, from our budget, were all of our did we just, after that, just not buy textbooks? And so, given that the budget stabilization factor is still in effect, I assume, this would, I guess it just dawned on me how detrimental not passing this would be for our kids. We're not talking about, I always thought, well, we were on a 10-year cycle. We weren't on a 10-year cycle. There was no money to do textbooks, or it sounds like buses, and that would have not been coming.
That is correct. And there's another factor here as well with the change in the state max on assessment. So Megan, do you feel comfortable talking a little bit about that and how that might impact funding and also the inflation rating? I think it's a complicated puzzle when you put all the pieces together to figure out the funding in an organization this large. There's no question about it.
So, yeah, there's a lot of moving parts that are coming our way. And so, as Tom referenced, the state legislature passed a bill that changes the assessment rates for various definitions of property groupings. And so, one of the things that Brenda Donis wanted to point out is she's still trying to figure out how to implement this change from state law. And so part of the property definitions and the assessment rates have changed. So they're trying to figure out, okay, we have to apply this rate to this type of property. How are we going to define that type of property? So that's a big change that I think all of us are trying to evaluate what that really means for us long term. Now there was a workaround in that the state legislature agreed to these reduced assessment rates, but it's really for a short period of time. That was in lieu of a potential ballot measure that would permanently reduce property assessment rate. And so there's always going to be this give and take and this push and pull. And I think the thing that I would say is if assessment rates are dropped, and that's a permanent change, that's also going to have a significant impact on the revenues that come into the district. Now, the state is trying to backfill, so that would impact, your fire districts, your cities, other municipalities. The state's going to backfill the funding for those entities, but they're not necessarily going to backfill 100% of the funding for school districts. So again, school districts are getting kind of singled out in terms of the state not fulfilling funding promises that were made in the past. My opinion. I wanted to make another point. Now I don't remember what that was, but to your point about not buying things, not buying buses, not buying curriculum, I think that's also when we had these very, very contentious negotiations with our teachers, and that's probably partly why we didn't have the money to put into our teacher salaries. We were having to make decisions. Do we buy a bus or 2 buses? Do we buy curriculum? Do we pay teachers more? And that's really what led to that really, really contentious environment in the past.
Megan, I just
can
have a real quick question. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I have a follow-up too.
Do CTE teachers still have the opportunity to apply for Perkins dollars?
Yes, they do. Perkins, yeah. Perkins is very limited. It doesn't
Right.
provide a lot of funding.
It's gotten
but yes.
worse in the last few years, I know.
Yes.
Well, and that brought up, thank you, you segued into the question I had, which is, what percentage of our budget is people?
About 85%.
Okay. And then the other question is, I know in the past we had I know I remember seeing it, how other districts around us were paying versus us, and sort of the parity and gaps there. And I don't know if this is more of a question for Annette, Mrs. Overton, or what, but where are we in competitive spaces on hiring teachers?
Why don't we get you that information
Okay.
over the next week or so, just what the starting teacher salary is and maybe the ending teacher salary for those districts we compete with. Would we love them?
That'd also be good
Right.
information, I think, for
Right.
us to have. Yeah.
I agree. We've worked hard to stay competitive. I think that Hooter passed us up this year. They're now at 47,000 for starting teacher pay. We had been ahead of Hooter, so that's misfortunate in our hiring. What's our starting at exactly? 42 and change, yeah, 42,275-ish is where we start with first year teachers. But I'll have Ms. Overton put some of that information together, and we'll make sure you get it. We'll put a little packet together for you for your weekly memo that you've been asked about tonight.
Well, and I guess the other question I have is, I know you're in communication with Andy Feinstein, but it'd be interesting to see what the teacher based universities programs like UNC are pumping out in the way of teacher candidates now, and kind of where their percentages are based on years past and where they are now. It's always been my understanding that UNC is now graduating far less teacher candidates than they have in their entire history.
Everybody is.
And so you see what I'm getting at. My fear, my concern is that competitive space we need to be in to hire the people that are 85% of our budget.
We know that far greater numbers of openings occurred this year and last year than the number of new that were produced in the state of Colorado. We do know that.
Okay.
I talked to, funny story, I talked to an Uber driver the other day that said that she had a master's degree in education, and she said that she retired during COVID because of the stuff, and she made more her first year driving Uber than she did teaching with a master's degree.
About where the employment
It's rough.
force is going.
Where do I get the app? I'm just kidding.
Just to add to your point, Mr. Matthews, it's our $1 billion of facilities. We weren't able to replace roofs or boilers or chillers or get our kids out of that.
And all that just gets us to today's numbers, nothing down the road. That's not forward-looking at all. It's just kind of making up for where we've been lacking.
I appreciate too, Kyle, you constantly bring us back into focus on the growth that we will expect to see in Will County, and that we constantly need to be thinking about that growth.
So are you welcoming all comments right now, or is it more just kind of questions on what's going on?
This is your meeting.
Okay, so I'm going to probably not be well liked after my comments on some of the things I have, but I guess my concerns right now are, and you and I did talk about this, Tom, where some of it does come across as being emotional, because people are hurting. They are hurting really bad. They're deciding, do I put food on the table? Do I put gas in my car? And you say that's not a tax increase, but that's not how people are going to view it. They're going to see, oh my gosh, they're wanting more money, they're going to tax me, and they're not seeing that it's not going to affect them for 2 years now. They're going to see that it's on the ballot, that they're going to be hit with that now. And, I mean, just the other day, I was in the grocery store, and there was a family in there. It was just a husband and wife, but they were grocery shopping for their family. And I saw the woman crying, and I stopped because, you know, I just wanted to make sure she was okay. I didn't say anything to him. I was just doing my shopping. And then they had their calculator out on their phone, and they were trying to decide how they were going to buy the groceries. And in the end, the husband looked at her and said, we don't have the money. She says, what are we going to do for the last 2 meals of the week? And he says, I don't know. So they put their stuff away. She walked out crying, and he paid for what he had. If I had it, I would have helped him, because I fall in that group. I fall in that group that is struggling to go paycheck to paycheck. I'm making the cuts. I'm doing everything I can. And you look at the inflation of where we're at today. This is some scary times for people. And then I'm really disappointed. And I know this went out to everybody. I appreciate that I was informed of the time of the change of the meeting, but this discouraged me when I opened up my door and I found this envelope on the outside, and the only thing that it contained was a letter saying that the meeting changed.
It's actually required by law that if we change the regular start time of the meeting, we have to notify you, and we have to do it in a way that, so that was required by law.
So $26.95 times 8, we're looking at $215 was spent to mail out a single letter that to me could have been done in a different way. And I understand you say it was done, but it's by law, but that could have fed it.
Required by law.
But in our county, that could feed a family for a week. And then if you look at Terry and Pepper are always focused on the population that we serve. The 60% of our population is poverty-stricken in our area. And where do they fall? Most of them fall on the east side of town. Those people are homeowners as well. And if they're not homeowners, they're renters. So when their mortgage goes up or their taxes go up, they're hurting already. I mean, we're looking at coming out to pay for their lunches right now because we know our community is hurting. Do we really feel right now that this is the time that we should be asking for more money? Because we don't even know how bad our recession, and yes, we are in a recession by definition, how bad it's going to get.
Taylor?
Yes.
We're not asking for more money. We are not asking for more money.
But you're still asking them to contribute to the school.
We're not asking for more money.
Nothing on
We're
that.
not asking for more money.
Nothing on that list would I take off, because I know and recognize our school needs this. And I know and I see the changes, the positivity, and what it's done to benefit our schools. And I do know our teachers need more money. I do know we need to be competitive. Everything on that list needs to stay on there. But I don't know if this is the year to ask for it when we don't even know the direction of where we're going to be, because they just passed another tax increase within Congress. And they're saying if you make $30,000 or more, you're going to be paying more taxes. So you got to look at the whole picture, not just it's $278 per family. Look at what they're paying more on gas, the groceries, your taxes on your house. I mean, everything is going up.
I think you got to remember, we're not doing it. We're giving them the opportunity to choose. They're going to vote. If they can't afford it, then they'll vote no. Some people would make the sacrifice to pay more, $100, $200 more to keep these programs. So I think the voters put it in place. I think they should choose if it stays in or out. It shouldn't be our choice.
I'm
Well,
just struggling
hey,
if
guys,
this is the right time of
I
year.
mean, we don't want to have the debate tonight. I mean, I appreciate, certainly wanted you to speak, Taylor. But yeah, we are out of time, and we'll get to have the debate in our business meeting in 2 weeks. And so we just wanted to get the information tonight. And thank you to all of you guys who presented. We appreciate the time in putting this together, and certainly Mayor Norton for your time tonight. Moving right along, guys.
Can I just clarify something?
Oh, sir.
Okay, so when you say we will have the debate at the public meeting on the 22nd, I think it's important for all of us to realize that that is the time that we'll get additional information for Mayor Norton regarding the polling information. I'm sure there will be people also coming in public participation. So I'm just clarifying and confirming that every one of us on the board will have the opportunity during that time to be able to speak to our viewpoint, and as you two started tonight, that we'll all have that opportunity on the 22nd to be able to share that information, and it will be structured as such.
Absolutely.
Just clarifying
yeah.
and confirming.
Yes.
Mr. President, I know you're running out of time, but I need to clarify what I said. We are not raising taxes. We are putting something on the ballot for them to decide if they want to pay the same now and pay that same later under different assessments. So you and any elected body in the state of Colorado cannot raise taxes. It has to go to the people if it was a raise. So the fact of the matter is that's it. There's two things there to say that you're not raising taxes.
I concur with where I'm not raising the taxes, but I'm
Well, I just
Yeah.
want to clarify that. I'm sorry.
Thank you, Mayor Norton. We're now to our debrief of the work session, and we will, since we started this way, we'll start with Ms. Bash.
It was a lot of information, and I appreciate Mayor Norton coming to bring the information that you collected, and I love having the visual, the charts and the numbers, and I'm sure we'll all be mulling this over for a couple of weeks. It feels similar to when we had all these discussions about the bond issue. Yeah, there's ways to look at it, so I look forward to thoughtful comments next time, and bringing their life experience and the people that they know and all of that. So I think meeting got a lot of work to do this year, and not running.
Thank you, Mayor Norton and Megan. You guys are wonderful. But I learned more tonight than I've learned in a long time, and I really appreciate it. I do. So a lot to think about over the next 2 weeks, and you guys have given me some information that will help me. I really appreciate it.
Ms. Babs.
Agree. Thank you to everyone for presenting tonight, and appreciate all the information.
Yeah, same thing. There's a lot of work you guys put into this for the better of the community, so appreciate your efforts, and excited to get going in the school year. It's got a lot of big things to deal with, so excited to get to work.
Pepper?
Ditto what everyone else said. I don't have anything to add.
I appreciate that you actually did add some of the financial part in there, so you answered some of those questions, and thank you. And thank you to you, Megan, as well.
So, President Matthews, you probably want to hear as well.
You can go first.
Thank you. Sorry. I just want to say that, this was a lot of information tonight. I'm sure as you go back and look at the slides and you look at the other information that we'll share with you this Friday, that you may have questions, ma'am, things you want to understand more deeply or you're wondering about, please do not hesitate to reach out to me with those questions. I can to get you the information so that you can make an informed decision when you come together on the 22nd. That is the latest date of our board meeting that we can actually make this, meet the deadline for notifying the county to put it on the ballot. We do need to make a decision that night to either vote it to go on or to vote it to not go on.
Thank you, Dr. Pilch. Again, thanks to everybody. Again, a lot of information. We've spent a lot of time going over this, and we've only got about 15 minutes for dinner. So make sure you get there, get your food quickly, and we'll be back in the board meeting 6 o'clock. Thanks, guys.
And I'm also available